I'll admit something here. I'm kind of fascinated by musical theater. I know, a lot of people think they are kind of cheesy, and the idea of an actor singing their lines can seem a little silly, I'll admit. But that's also where the beauty of a musical lies. Is it cringy? Yes. Musicals require a strong suspension of disbelief, but it's in that intense and exaggerated mix of music and narrative, when you embrace the cringe, that it's possible to express the extremes of certain emotions with the particulars that only music can offer, from the pains of a barber transformed by cruelty, to the celebration of pleasures in what is strange, to the doubts of a sinner about his spiritual leader. All of these are emotions that hit me harder because they are expressed not only in the narrative dimension, but through sounds, notes, musical themes, and motifs. And after playing the demo for Stray Gods, I can't help but wonder, why has no one ever thought of making a musical game before?
Is the world too much, or is it just me? Everything I set upon unravels at my feet.
Stray Gods is weird, but at the same time it makes perfect sense. It's not exactly an RPG as you may be used to, but it's definitely a role-playing game. And our starting point is Grace, the protagonist, but you decide what kind of person she will become.
You really want to join our band? You sure you got the right audition?
And this is a world where many beings from Greek mythology are still around, so don't be surprised if you find Pan wearing a modern suit or Calliope with a colored eyeshadow. We know that Grace gets involved in a murder plot, and that the main conflict of the game revolves around proving her innocence and dealing with her new powers. But we don't know this because of the demo, which in a clumsy way shows two moments of the narrative disconnected from each other, leaving the inciting events of the game up in the air. As a demo, it's kind of weird and unfinished, but if the developers release this weird demo, it's because they must have confidence in the concept and main mechanics of the game, and that confidence seems justified to me. We only have access to these two moments, an audition for a band and a conflict between Grace and two other characters. And so we only have two songs, enough to get to know more about Grace and understand how the interactive part of the game works. The choices work like a Bioware dialogue wheel, with the available choices depending on the traits you decided for your character. But the genius here is that your choices not only determine the course of the conversation and what your character says, but also what she sings, how she expresses herself musically, as well as the rhythms and elements in the music played.
How the hell did you find me? This is the weirdest night I've ever had. And you say I have powers? How could this possibly turn out bad? Am I doing it now?
Brilliant!
Playing any RPG is a bit like a performance, but in Stray Gods this is elevated to the game's central mechanic. Because just like in the best musicals, the main narrative moments and the main way of understanding the intimacy of the characters is through music and musical interactions between these characters, even without feeling connected to these characters, because the demo is so short and choppy. You can see the quality of the writing both in the dialogue options and in the lyrics of the songs themselves. I don't know how it works, but it works. Maybe it has to do with the fact that the game is developed by David Gaider, ex-Bioware, who surprisingly had played with the idea of a music RPG as a DLC for Dragon Age, a series in which Gaider was a lead writer, but Bioware didn't have the courage to follow through. Now we have Stray Gods. The experience of Gaider and the other talents in the studio explain why the branching dialogue seems to work so well, and why the world building seems so interesting, with this mix of mythology and modernity that reminds me of Vertigo classics like Sandman or Promethea. But it doesn't explain why the music part is so good, because as far as I know, nothing exactly like this has been attempted before, at least not in video games. Okay, that one doesn't count.
Me.
I say at least not in video games, because Stray Gods' main inspiration is one of, if not the best episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, in which the narrative is told through music. A risky move at the time and something completely unexpected that yielded one of the most acclaimed TV episodes of all time. Even the Grace's outfit reminds me a bit of Buffy's outfit, don't you think? Stray Gods tries to do in video games what this episode of Buffy did on TV, mixing different forms, the video game and the musical, to make something new and frankly very stylish. If you're one of those, yes, the game will have romance options, including songs and moments that can only be accessed if you play it again and make different choices. It's worth noting that the game was made with the help of the government of Australia, which in recent years has brought us excellent games like Cult of the Lamb and Untitled Goose Game. And look, I know, musicals are weird, but I hope it's good and that I can recommend it when the game comes out in early August on Steam. Also because it's a very mechanically light game, so it seems great to recommend to people in my life who don't like video games very much. After all, music is a universal language. If you wanna check out the demo, it's available on Steam at least until the moment I'm writing this. If you have watched until here, even if you don't like musicals, I really appreciate your time and attention. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.
Can we all loosen up now? Remember, this madness is happening to me. This music makes sense to me somehow. But pulling me round is not what I need.
Is that gonna be here all the time?
How dare you? You don't know me.
If she has to be, pass me some wine.
Grace